Welcome back to the Docker Basics section of the Getting Started with Docker course. In this lesson, we're going to be updating our container. So let's jump over to PowerShell and we're going to look at what's currently running. So Docker PS, and we have that one container that is currently using port 8080 to map over to its internal port 80. It's called the Hello Docker container, and it's using the image Hello Docker version 1.0.0. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new container to utilize a new version of this image, which we don't have yet. So what we'll do is we'll build a new image and then we'll create a new container. Let's start by making the change we want to see. So in our HTML, let's just modify this, and let's just say we'll create an h2 tag that says this is the change we wanted to see. Like so, and we'll save it. And now we have a new HTML page. But unfortunately, if we were to go to our web server and refresh, of course it's not changed because that's not the file we copied over to our image. So how do we resolve that? Well, we don't have to change the Docker file because there's nothing to change. It's still copying the same files, it's just the files have now changed. So what we can do is first Docker stop AEF. Stop the currently running container because it's using port 8080 and I want to use port 8080. So that's step one. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a clear screen and look at our Docker images. And we have hello-docker with a tag of 1.0.0. I think you know what we're going to do. We're going to say docker build-t hello docker version 1.0.1. And don't forget the dot at the end for the current directory to look for that Docker file. Notice how quickly that went, because it said, hey, step one is to pull from the Alpine version of HTTPD, which we already have, and that's the 324A, which is right here. Step two is to copy those over to a container, which we just did. But it's ACC. This is A13 because we create a new image. So now if we do a clear screen and say Docker images, we now have two Hello Dockers. One that's version 1.0.0 and one that's version 1.0.1. They both say they're 124 megabytes. Yes and no. They build on top of each other, so the actual versions are tiny, a couple kilobytes. So now what we can do is we can say docker run -- name hello docker container 2. Now we could call it something else. We could also get rid of the original container. I'm not going to do that yet, but this is fine for now, just to call it something different. And then we map out our port. So port, we're going to say we want port 8080 on our machine to map over to port 80, same thing. And then we're going to use the image hello docker version 1.0.1. So the new version of our image. And there we go. And I should have shown you the -d. We'll get to -d in a little bit to disconnect that from the terminal. But I just Control-C to close or cancel it. Let's clear the screen and say Docker PS. And now we have from an image Docker Hello Docker 1.0.1. It's been up for 16 seconds, and its name is Hello Docker Container. It wraps the next line 2. So now if we open up our web browser and we do a refresh, it says this is the change we wanted to see. now our web server has been updated. So we've got a new version based upon the new image. But if we want, we can do a docker ps-a, which there's all our containers. We can do docker stop and stop the 984, which is our currently running new version. We can do a docker start on AEF. And now we can go back to our web page and we can refresh it, and it's the old version again. So we have both versions now if you want to. This is really helpful for when you are deploying software, because you're deploying a whole container, which means that if anything were to happen, let's say you tested everything, it's working, you got a brand new version, you deploy it, and then you find a major, scary, nasty bug that you missed that is just horrendous, and you need to roll back. Well, we just did that with a couple of commands. Docker stop, docker start. I rolled back the version just that simply. You can do the same thing. You can just say, okay, new container, you start, old container stops, of course, but then any problem, start the old container, stop the new container, and you're good to go. So real easy to have different versions, and everything comes with it. So we're talking about configuration in the operating system. Any changes that you made, maybe in my Docker file, I made some tweaks to how the operating system works or where I copy the files, and it wasn't right. No problem. Roll that container back. Our entire operating system gets refreshed back to what it was. So there's no remembering what things you changed and changing the back, because everything comes with that container. Very easy to work with. All right. So now what we have, let's just clear the screen. If we say Docker images, we've got now 5 images. If I say Docker ps-a, we have, looks like 3 different containers. We're starting to kind of pile up the different pieces that we have here. And that's a little messy. So in our next lesson, we're going to learn how to clean some of this up. The things you don't need, we can clean them out. Okay? So that's the next lesson. Come on back for that.